A goal, Chris Billy, Huddersfield Town. The most famous goal of Chris Billy's life.
Is this the moment for Lee Fowler? It is. Take your place in Division 2, Huddersfield Town.
Ruby and Steve Simonson's boots now. He's missed. Steve Simonson clears the frame of the goal and collapses in a heap of tears. Huddersfield Town are promoted.
Mustafa Schindler has a chance to write his name in Huddersfield Town legend. And he takes that chance!
Hello and welcome to The Drive-In, the perfect pocket-sized podcast for your drive into the stadium for your next town game. The name devised by my co-host, who was a huge fan of the boy band Blue a few years ago. It's Ian Kilroy. You okay, pal?
Co-host, look at me getting a promotion already, Matt. Is that how we're going with it now?
I was going to say co-anchor, but by the way I pronounce it, it sounds a little bit like something else, so I probably won't say co-wanker. I'm your other co-host, Matt Shaw, and we're here to discuss Huddersfield Town's trip to Bolton. First off, before we get going, a little history. Huddersfield Town and Bolton both have a very long and proud history. The Terriers, of course, are the original thrice champions, but what of Bolton? Initially formed in 1874 as Christchurch FC, they were renamed to Bolton Wanderers in 1877 and were one of the original 12 founding members of the Football League. Called Wanderers due to using several different grounds in a short space of time before settling at their long-term home, Burnden Park, in 1895. And many people may remember the supermarket that used to block half the view of the pitch when you were in the away end at Burnden Park. Huddersfield won the FA Cup in 1922, but were defeated in a replay in the 1923 edition at Burnden Park in the third round, and Bolton went on to win their first FA Cup that year at the first ever Wembley final. Bolton would win the FA Cup again in 1926 and 29, a decade in which Huddersfield Town would dominate the league, whereas Bolton were the most successful FA Cup side, as Town failed in 3 finals against different opposition up to 1930. Bolton will win the FA Cup again in 1958 with the great Nat Lofthouse team. Many people may remember Nat Lofthouse bundling the goalkeeper into the net from some of the old footage. However, they've not won the top flight like Huddersfield Town have. Head-to-head, the teams have played 103 times, Town winning 37, Bolton 46, and 20 draws. Town have won the last 4 meetings, though, between the sides with an Abdulhamid Sabiri-inspired performance, leading Town to a 2-1 win in the FA Cup back in 2018. One quirk is Town have failed to beat Bolton, or did fail to beat Bolton, from 1969 to 1990, which technically touches 4 decades until a 4-0 win in 1990. Quirky game memories, Killer. Have you got any sort of memories from any games against Bolton? I know that we tend to have sort of a history against Bolton where we play them a lot and then don't play them for ages, play them a lot, don't play them for ages, and you're in and out of the country quite a lot, aren't you?
I am. So my memory is obviously very limited over the last decade or so, but I'm pretty sure Mustafa Carriol got one of his very rare goals for Town against Bolton. I think he scored twice in the same year against him. I think when he was with us on loan, he's from Brighton, Matt. Is that where we were at initially? And he scored in the game at home, I think, against them, which was a comfortable victory. And then we went away and beat him later on in the season. He scored twice, and I don't think he's managed that in his career any other time against the same club twice in a season. But yeah, that's what sticks out for me.
There's one that sticks out for me, and I think you have to be a bit. I think you'll remember this, Killer. You're of the right age. A fond memory of mine was Bolton were really good in the 1990s. I remember they used to have the raided Scandinavia, didn't they, at one point, for like Eidiger Jansson, Per Franson, and a few decent players. And they used to have a winger called Michael, I think it was Michael Johansson, back in the 1990s, and he was really good. And it was a rampant 90s Bolton team turned up to Peter Jackson's Huddersfield Town in March 1999. Craig Armstrong scored on his debut, on his home debut for Huddersfield Town, and we won 3-2 in what was probably the most undeserved victory you will ever see, because Nico Vassen pulled off some unbelievable saves. I think he made about 10 one-on-one saves, pulled off all sorts, came and got all sorts of crosses in probably what is it, one of the best individual goalkeeping displays anyone will ever see anywhere. He was absolutely unbelievable. Bolton could genuinely have had 10. And that was Town's only win against Bolton during an 11-game spell from 1993 to 2013. So you can see that Huddersfield have had some really dry spells from the 60s to the 90s, and then again from the 90s to 2013. Bolton weren't a team that Huddersfield took a lot from. Recent form killer. Bolton's recent form hasn't been great, having won once in the league this season, and they sit in 18th. However, maybe things are starting to look up a little bit as they're getting a few players back from injury. And last time out, they won 3-2 at Barrow in the Bristol Street Motors Trophy. But you've had a little look into the data there, and you think that Bolton's 18th place is probably a little bit undeserved at the moment.
Yeah, I think coming to this season, Bolton are expected to kind of, the fans are especially looking at it as if they're going for the top two. Ever since Ian Everts joined them, they've got better year on year on year. And obviously, we're 4 games into the season plus a couple of cup games. I don't really count the cup games, but to be fair, Bolton are doing really well in them. I think they've drawn Arsenal in the 3rd round of the EFL Cup. And again, like you say, they beat Barrow in the trophy, I think, this past week. But they're the league form's not been great. It's not been great, but just like Rotherham, I think last week, you can look at it and you can say, right, they've only won 1 game, drawn 1 game, and lost a couple of them. But the games themselves have been quite unfortunate in that they've dictated basically all 4 games. The only game that they struggled a little bit in was the game they won, the first game of the season, when they beat Leyton Orient away from home. And obviously that Leyton Orient now are bottom of the league, I think. And that might not necessarily be the toughest fixture, but you still think it's a bit of a difficult job to go there and to win that game. Since then, Bolton have drawn, like you say, Matt, against Wrexham 0-0. Wrexham are now top of the league, though. So you're looking at that as another kind of... Is it as bad now, even a few games down the line, than the Bolton fans would have expected at that point? But even that game, Bolton should have won. They had chances to win the game. Wrexham defended pretty tight and compact, expecting Bolton to throw quite a lot at them. They did and couldn't break it down. But the last couple of games for Bolton haven't been great. They've failed to score in both league games, which is surprising considering last season, I think, Matt, they scored 86 goals. They're a team that normally do score goals, but they're just struggling a little bit. It does remind me of that Rotherham thing a little bit again. But they can't score at the moment. They haven't scored for a couple of games, but in the games themselves, they're dominating the game. They've got twice as much possession. They're having twice as many shots as the other team in most games they play. It's just not really rubbing off for them just yet when it comes to winning games. Hopefully that doesn't change this weekend, but they're a lot better than the 18th position in the table suggests.
Well, you've heard from us, everyone, so let's hear from a Bolton fan. So this week I've spoken to Ben, who is from a podcast Bolton do called The Fan Zone. And here's what Ben's had to say on Bolton's start to this season.
Hello, ladies and gents. It's Ben from the Fan Zone podcast here. Looking forward to our game at the weekend. Not because of how our season has gone so far, though. It's not been a great start for the Wanderers. I think it's fair to say we have failed to impress on quite a few occasions towards the end of last season, and it feels like that's seeped into this season a little bit. Perhaps a little bit of a playoff hangover there, but nothing I don't think that Ian Everett can turn around and, refine some form amongst the team and hopefully kick on and get some points on the board, because it's been a concerning start to the season for Wanderers. I wouldn't say it's all in hand. I wouldn't say it's all under control. We can only hope that it eventually becomes less concerning. But yeah, a little bit of a playoff hangover perhaps. New signings still finding their feet. A couple of injuries that have set people back in pre-season. So it's a very important game on Saturday. A very important one. I expect us to line up probably pretty similar to the last game. There aren't too many injuries or new injuries, I should say. There are a couple of players coming back, which is good news for us. I would expect probably to stick with the new shape. So instead of going with 2 up front, it's more like a front 3 with 2 10s and 1 number 9. And sacrificing someone in midfield for that. So I'd expect us to line up pretty similar. I can't imagine there'll be too many changes. I think minutes in the tank for a routine 11 is vitally important now. There's been a couple of, chopped changes because of injuries and cup games and whatnot, but I think we need now a consistent run of games with a consistent starting 11 so that they can build some relationships and fluidity about their approach. Score prediction is a tough one. It's I don't think it's going to be an easy game for either team, to be fair. I think Wanderers have to respond to the criticism, to the critics, and they have to, improve. There's no denying that, and I'm hoping this game will be the one that they do it. So score prediction, I'm gonna go 4-2-1. I think it will be a narrow win for the Wanderers, and fingers crossed 3 points, because it needs to be. Pubs for the away fans then, I think the best one is the Beehive. That's the one that's recommended. For most away fans, the Beehive is not far from the ground at all. It's just at the top of, sort of, if you imagine Reebok, it's right at the top, just at the end of the road, basically. It's not too far away. It's a short walk for all you away fans, but most of the places on Middlebrook are usually okay with away fans. But I think the Beehive, if you want an actual pub, designated pub, is the place to go. Parking then for all you away fans. The best spot to go is probably Middlebrook. It is a bit of a nightmare getting off there at the end of a game, though. It's not the most well-engineered and well-designed car park that ever existed, but it's the closest to the ground. Obviously, you're only a couple of minutes away. You can park in and around places in Horwich, but they're a little bit of a walk. So the best place is probably Middlebrook, but be prepared to wait a little bit after the game. But yeah, come on, you Whites.
There we go. Thanks very much to Ben for that. Some good information in there as well if you're travelling down there on Saturday with regards to where to park and what pubs to go to as well. We did have an email actually from. Let me have a look who that was from. We had an email from Chorley Club. Have actually said that if you do want to head down there, you can go to. Let me see what they are. Social Club. So Chorley Social Club, 6 miles from the Bolton ground. So if you do want to go there, that's also an option as well. But some good options given from Ben. Middlebrook. That rings a bell, doesn't it, Killer? Do you ever used to play the old Pro Evo games in the Master League where it used to be like Tradbrick Stadium, man red, man blue, and all that sort of stuff? Bolton always used to be Middlebrook, didn't they, on the Pro Evo games because they didn't have the licenses to use it. That thing stands out. And he mentioned Reebok as well for the stadium. It's the Reebok. It's like Huddersfield's the McAlpine Stadium, isn't it? And theirs is the Reebok Stadium. That'll always be the case for me. Although Tough Sheet Stadium is pretty funny, but it'll always be the Reebok to me. And obviously two very similar clubs, aren't they? They both got very similar stadiums. Bolton, to me, have always been like a Huddersfield Town in Lancashire and Huddersfield Town are like a Bolton in Yorkshire. It's almost like Huddersfield twinned with Bolton, isn't it? They both got really good histories. Both similar-ish kind of clubs. Bolton probably get a few more fans through the door than what we do, but there's a lot of similarities between the two. Right, mate, let's go to everybody's favourite who watches this on YouTube and probably not if they listen to it, and that is the tactics board. And we'll have a think about how Huddersfield Town and Bolton may line up this coming weekend. Okay, so Killer, judging from the screen what we've got in front of us, Town likely to line up in a 3-5-2. Michael Duff still seems quite married to this at the moment, doesn't he? It's a system which I don't see him changing anytime soon, simply because we don't really have any further options in terms of wingers or width to make it a 3-4-3, similar to what Bolton have gone to recently. For me, Town, the team still kind of picks itself a little bit. You've got Lee Nichols will start in goal, all being well. Lee Nichols has been fantastic this season. He was great again against Rotherham. The back three, interesting. There could be a slight difference, I think, maybe in the back three. I think teams have noticed that there's a huge gap and space in this area between Tom Lees and Lasse Sorensen. where teams have really targeted that. Rotherham in particular really targeted that area as well. Malik Wilkes pulled out to that side as well. So I noticed against Doncaster in the Bristol Street Motors, Town actually used Nigel Lonvike as a right centre back because he sort of bridged that lack of pace between the two there. So I'm just wondering whether Nigel Lonvike will actually start on the right-hand side rather than the left, which he's obviously been brought in to do. But it may be a short-term stopgap that he moves to the right, Tom Lees to the left, and Mikael Helik starts in the middle. Any advances on that back three?
No, I think you're right with the swap there at right centre back, because Sorensen was really found out against Rotherham, wasn't he? We went through it in the review podcast, and he looked like he never defended before in his life, which is such a U-turn on how he'd performed up until then. But he'd never really been questioned, and now, like you say, Bolton will have looked at that and they'll be looking at how to exploit it too. And I think Lonvik on that side would probably offer a little bit more protection than Lees does, just pace alone more than anything else. I think on the left-hand side with Miller's pace, Lees can probably do a bit better of a job over there. But something has to change because it is a real weakness in our defensive three there.
I mean, Sorensen and Miller still pick themselves, don't they, at wing-back, even irrespective of form. So I imagine that's not going to change much. It's the middle three, which I think have got a lot of people questioning at the moment. I mean, we've questioned it on the podcast, and Matt Glennon mentioned Evans and Wiles as well, very much out of form in the last 3 games. And we didn't do a podcast on the Doncaster game, and we're not here to do that now, but things didn't improve at all in that Doncaster game. I mean, Ben Wiles had an absolute Reggie Blinker again, didn't he, against Doncaster? I don't know what was going on with him there, and the penalty that he gave away. I will say one thing. That's a bit of a Kevin Nagalism there, isn't it? I will say one thing, and that is they got a penalty, and we should have had a Stonewall one at the other end. Referees are absolutely shafting us at the minute, and on spot kick decisions, it's unreal. But I don't really care about that competition, so we'll move on. But the midfield is going to be interesting. I still think Jonathan Hogg's going to get that nod at number 6 in a game like this, basically because of the way Bolton line up. And that will be with the 3 that they've got at the minute will drift into areas in front of our defence and cause issues. So I think Jonathan Hogg may at times find himself a little bit overloaded in there, potentially. But I would imagine that Ben Wiles may find himself out of the team. Not necessarily because he's been worse than Evans over the last 3 or 4 games in total, just because I think they may want to pick Joe Hodge. And then what that does is if Bolton are attacking in front of our defence, Joe Hodge can just kind of sit in, can't he, with Jonathan Hogg a little bit and follow, because that is essentially his role. And he may just allow the extra protection, and then we may go in that sort of diamond shape there with Evans may then sit a little bit further forward. So I think that might be a case of what happens. I'll be very surprised if it's Wiles, Evans, and Hogg again. Although I probably wouldn't, because Town are obviously trying to work on things. But I think it may be. Is it too early for Hodge, do you think, Killer? Or do you think that
no? I think
international duty, but I just think that might be a pragmatic approach Michael Duff might take, because Hodge can. He's got legs, hasn't he? He can get up and down, and he's just maybe a little bit more defensively aware. And if they're playing a 3, and they're going to play with 2 attacking midfielders, sort of 2 sort of central attacking types behind probably Dion Charles. That means that's going to give Town a lot to do in these sort of defensive areas here, in front of the back 3 and then wide as well. So Town have really got to be on their game, and I think Hodge just offers a little bit more protection than maybe what Wiles or Evans do in there. So I imagine that is, and I presume he'll pick Evans instead of Wiles, although I could see that going either way, to be honest. But I would imagine that Evans will probably get the nod for that one. And then up front, Killer is. I'll let you come back to the midfield in a moment, but up front it's going to be interesting as well. Josh Karoma has been on international duty for Sierra Leone, and that's flying to and from Africa is not ideal, is it? And I think they're playing tonight, so we're recording this on Tuesday night as well. So he's obviously probably not going to fly back until tomorrow. So he'll be Wednesday. It'll be a travel day, so he's probably going to link up with the squad Thursday, Friday, isn't he? He's probably going to need a day off, and then he may not link up with the squad till Friday. So I still think he'll play. because we're lacking options. Callum Marshall's been away as well on international duty, and he's played in both games as well for Northern Ireland, which is great for Callum Marshall. We've signed Freddie Ladapo. Let's not go into what I said about Freddie Ladapo on the review podcast. I've never been a fan of him as a player, and people will always say, "Oh, he's only just signed, give him a chance." He's 31 years old. I've seen him for years for Rotherham, and I've always felt that he was not great. In all honesty, he's good at popping up in the 6-yard box if you can get into good areas and fire crosses in. Outside of that, I've never really been impressed with him. But he's a Town player now, and everyone starts with a clean slate. So I genuinely hope he gets 15, 20 goals from now to the end of the season, because we'll all be happy then. Good luck to Freddie Ladapo, and I hope he goes on to make me look like a complete weapon. and my comment on him last game. But I do think Koroma and Marshall start. I don't think Ladapo will be thrown straight in. Like I say, he signed yesterday, didn't he? He could do. He's got he'll have a full week's training with us. There's an option there, but there's already an understanding with Koroma and Marshall, isn't there? That you would expect them to start with Danny Ward suspended as well, and Bojan. Even if I think Bojan's back on the grass, as they say. I don't think anyone ever said that until David Wagner came to the football club, and now it's every coach afterwards has said on the grass, haven't they? Bojan's back, I think, in some form of training, but I don't know to what extent, and I doubt he'll be ready to play much part, if at all. Healy sounds like he may still be struggling as well, so we're quite light, aren't we, temporarily? So Ladapo definitely fills that need for a striker as well. So, but I would imagine he'll start on the bench, and the other two will kick things off. And I dare say we'll see him come the 60-minute mark, Killer.
I think we'll definitely see him at some point for sure, because there's no other options really. Like you say, Matt, there's no one around. But going back to that midfield and the debate over does Hodge start or not, Hogg's bound to start. He's had now, 10 days off. And as we were talking to Glennon on the review podcast, you can tell they're not happy with how the midfield's working, because they got extra minutes in that cup game where really you shouldn't, in our position, be risking too many first teamers in there. But you can see you want to give them a bit more time, Duff, to see if they can gel. Didn't work. It got worse when they came on, didn't it? How you bring a first team midfielder on, how you bring a unit on late on in the game to try and change it and win it and lose to a team in division below, when on paper you're doing quite well in the league. And it was quite embarrassing, that aside. And yes, Matt, the referee was atrocious. Again, decisions that are just going against us at this point of the season, which I can't fathom. It's not even bad refereeing though, Matt, is it, right? Because it's happened to us twice in a row. So it's not even just like you can say, well, they're awful for everybody. It definitely feels like it's very anti.
It never evens out. That's the biggest myth in football, is that decisions even out over the course of the season. It doesn't. It never has. It's bollocks. It
was a joke. It was an absolute joke. But regardless of that, our midfield was also a joke. And I think Wiles is going to be the one that's going to have to make way for Hodge. Bolton dictate possession. They're going to come and expect to have 70% possession on the weekend. That's what they'll be having. And when you've got that when you're facing that kind of a team, you don't want to have Evans and Wiles in your midfield. If they're going to have the ball, you don't want to have two guys that aren't necessarily the best off the ball at pressing. I think they hold the structure just fine, but I think you need a bit of a hassler in there. Hodge looks like that kind of midfielder. And to be honest, if you want to play like Kante, didn't he say that's what he developed his game upon? That's what he wants to be. And he's of a stature where he's not a big, tall guy, so he's going to have to do a lot of running to make up for it when you're only 5'7", I think he is, 5'6", 5'7". He's going to be an engine in there. To me, you've got to have him in that midfield. This is that moment where you bring him in. If you think he's ready to go, you let him go, because you need to have speed and not just direct pace, but just that energy to keep going. We know Hoggy's got it. It's not quite what it was, but he organises, he dictates and helps us be more compact off the ball. And that's what we're going to be a lot of on Saturday. And I think Town fans have to be ready for that. Bolton strangle games. They don't have the most exciting brand of football. They don't play expressive football. They look at very short passes. They like playing down the wing. So Sorensen and Miller will have a lot to do. They'll be busy defensively at the weekend. Another reason why I think Lonvik behind Sorensen's an important thing to go with. But that midfield, we still have to have a creative guy in there. So you have to have Evans or Wiles, of course, even though we've got, to be fair, no one else to replace them. Upenda could be a shout as well, but I doubt that. I think
it was
we'll go
good
with
against
Evans.
Doncaster. He was the best midfielder, wasn't he?
He was a bright spot, wasn't he, in a game that was very dark? He was the kind of guy that shone out a little bit. But I think you're going to have to go with Hodge and Hogg in there, which should be quite confusing for the commentators, I imagine. And then you're looking at your front two, and Bolton have conceded a few goals this year, Matt, trying to play out from the back. They're actually pretty awful. And now we've played one team this season that have tried to play out from the back time and time again, and that was Peterborough. And we killed them because we are pretty good at pressing up top if Corona's there. He's kind of your centre pin, isn't he, Matt? When you're looking for trying to press high. Yeah, he's playing for Sierra Leone tonight, and he's probably not going to... Is he in the Gambia? I think he's at Gambia. I think the Gambia today. So like you say, it'll be a late flight in. But for me, if he's there Saturday, you have to start him because he's been the standout player so far for the season. For me, going forward, he looks like he's at it. And Marshall's probably the guy to... Even if Ladapo had been in prior to this week, I still think you go with your two fast guys. If they're content with passing out from the back over and over again, even if they're making mistakes, you want to have as much pace up there as possible to try and force them into mistakes. Freddie Ladapo might be a fantastic signing for us between now and the end of the season. I really hope he is, Matt. I'm not as harsh on him as you are. He's scored goals at this level before. If you do look at his goal clips, though, Matt, like you say, they're all tapping from 2 yards out on rebounds from the keepers, a lot of them, or snapshots. It's not really...
There's a skill to that, though, isn't there? There is.
He's a box in the box.
Skill, yeah.
Jordan Rhodes scored, 50 goals in a season nearly from doing something pretty similar. But you can look at Ladapo, and I think some people might expect one type of striker that throws himself out about a bit and uses his raw pace to create chances. That's not Freddie Ladapo. That's not him, is it?
No, he hangs around looking for an opportunity to move into a position, doesn't he?
He's more of an old... Do you reckon he's an old school 9, Matt? A bit more of an older style kind of striker?
He's a bit of a... He's from when I've seen him, he's kind of second touch is a tackle kind of guy, but he's strong. He is strong back to goal. Yeah. He's actually quite strong and wiry. But he tends to just sort of... It's old school. Do you remember when you used to have pairings up front and you'd have a big man and a little man? It's more of a sort of player that allows or needs someone to do the bulk of the work up front, and he just goes about and tries to find space in behind and stuff. I actually think him and Koroma could potentially work quite well together. And I
think they'll be great, Matt. But this week, when you're not going to have much of the ball because Bolton like to dictate play, and you're away from home, it's not the week.
Not ideal. No, it's not ideal for that. I mean, Marshall's quite similar in many ways, but Marshall does put himself around quite a lot. Josh Cromer's not playing for Sierra Leone tonight. He's on the bench, so hopefully that stays as it is. They're drawing 1-1 in Zambia at the minute. So
it's nearly a rhyme.
Interesting.
But and with Hodge and Hogg, quickly back to that midfield, the way Bolton play, they normally have George Thomason and John Sheehan playing in midfield. Now, both of them are really good creators, but they throw themselves about a bit and get a lot of yellow cards as well. You know you're going to have a tough battle on Saturday in that midfield. And Town need to have workers, not shirkers. And whilst I think that's a derogatory thing you can say about Wiles and Evans, Wiles of the pair of them is probably the one that throws himself a little bit less. Evans against Rotherham were lucky to stay on because he got pissed off and he was throwing himself in challenges here, there and everywhere. Bolton away from home, he's what you need in there. He's what I'd have with Hodge and Hogg.
Yeah. So just quickly on how Bolton, we think Bolton might line up. I think they'll go with the 3-4-2-1 or 3-4-3 that they've been playing lately. Nathan Baxter seems to be the goalkeeper. He's quite decent. He can play out from the back a little bit. He's not bad. Chris Farino has been playing right centre back. Ricardo Santos, the big, he's Portuguese, isn't he? The big Portuguese defender. He's been their rock, their mainstay for a number of years now. Left centre back George Johnston, who I remember when they signed him. I remember Chris Markham, who we know obviously from this podcast, been very happy that he got George Johnston and he thought he was championship standard. But I think he's had a couple of injuries and he's just on his way back now. So that's a very good left-sided centre back in this league is George Johnston. So the back three on paper is actually really good. I think they're just having a couple of issues working together at the moment. But they've got Cogley tends to play right wing back. He's quite quick and gets up and down well. Left wing back, I think it's going to be Schön. They've got this Schön plays. It's either him or it's either Osuteti or Schön. I think Schön might get the nod. And it's in midfield where they'll look to dictate. And Josh Sheehan is mainly the guy I think who looks to dictate. And he came from Newport County, and I remember Bolton been very very pleased to grab him. It's not a headline grabber, is it? Signing a midfielder from Newport County, but he's a very technical player, and he's kept out I think it's Aaron Morley, isn't it, who was a good player for them the other year. And like you say, Thomason in midfield as well. McAtee, who had a good spell. Some people will remember his brother was linked with us from Man City, but this is the older version. He tends to play as an attacking midfielder / wide striker for them. And I think it'll be Dion Charles and maybe Aaron Collins up front again for them if fit. And Aaron Collins will probably go onto the right-hand side. And that's why you play Tom Lees, I think, on the left side, because Aaron Collins will be looked to come in field a little bit and he won't go so much on the outside. And he's big and strong, and that's good for Tom Lees, who likes a good physical challenge. It's going to be a tough game, mate. It's even if Bolton are in and out of form, they're a good side and they're expected to challenge the top two. It's an interesting time to play them, and it's like beware the wounded animal, isn't it? Really. It's what are you going for then this game? We'll move on to the predictions. Ben from the fan zone thinks 2-1 to Bolton. I sort of think you've got disenfranchised fans, two teams struggling to work through some issues early on. It's got a 0-0 written all over it against this, or a frustrating draw. I think one thing to sort of contemplate, and it might not have much bearing, but I think it has a little bit, and that is how Michael Duff seems to get the better of Ian Evatt quite a lot. And I'm sure Ian Evatt is due one against Michael Duff, so I don't think I don't think Michael Duff owns him or anything. I think the two very good managers who've come up against each other a couple of times, but Duff's just got the better of him at Barnsley, and it was Duff's sort of out of possession tactics which really stifled Bolton in the playoffs a couple of years ago, and Bolton really struggled with what Duff did at Barnsley. So it's going to be interesting to see if he tries something like that, because we haven't seen Town shut up shop really under Michael Duff yet. And I know that's what Michael Duff's built. He built his Cheltenham and Barnsley teams on being tough to beat. So it's going to be interesting to see if he tries that Town, or whether because he's at more of a I'm not saying we're a massive club, but I am saying we're a massive club, but a bigger fish who's expected to take the ball more, like he had at Swansea. So it's going to be interesting to see what he does. If we see a very Duff performance, not Duff as in the negative term, but a Michael Duff performance, I think we could see Huddersfield being very difficult to beat if he does go that way. But I'm going to go 0-0 killer, and I think it'd be a good one if we could get it.
Bolton are under pressure. Ian Evatt is under pressure from the fans. Now, Bolton fans are quite tough to please nowadays, aren't they, Matt? Those 90s and early 00s has kind of
once you've seen JJ Okocha, you can't go back, can you? I mean,
between that and Good Johnson, like you say, yeah, fair. Yeah. And I get it, fair enough. We'd probably be the same, but there's already discontent among the fan base. Having a quick look around the forums, and there's a poll on one of them asking if it's time for Ian Evatt to be removed from his job, which is strange after being in the playoff final.
As an outsider looking in, that feels mental to me, doesn't it?
It feels mental, but it just tells you what kind of the pressure is around a club like Bolton when they've got promoted from League Two and then finished mid-table and then missed out. Mid-table-ish, and then failed in the playoffs against Barnsley, and then failed in the final last year against Oxford when they were expected to win that game. That,
yeah, they should have.
But Ian Evatt came out afterwards and said it's fear. The players didn't turn up. It was all mental. And I wonder if that's a hangover that they're talking about when you're talking of a playoff hangover. And mentally, they just don't seem at it this year. And you look at the transfers that they've lost, they haven't lost many players, Matt. It's not like they've had a huge turnover in the squad and they've weakened. Because normally that's what happens, isn't it, Matt? League One level, if you don't quite get promoted, someone comes in picking your bit better players off. And then you struggle the year after. But that's not happened at Bolton. All they've lost Magoma, who was a loanee from Brentford, who I think he scored 8 and assisted 4 last year or something like that. That's all really they've lost. And Budvarsson was, I don't know where from Scandinavia he is, but he's only scored 8 or 9 goals in the season. So again, he's not kind of that main guy.
No, not key.
No, he's not. And you look at the guys who've brought in. Scotty Arfield's there now. And okay, he was at Charlotte in the MLS the year before, and it's not the greatest signing on paper, but we all know how effective Scotty Arfield can be. They've brought in Jay Matete. He's a centre midfielder on loan from Sunderland that's been promoted in the last 3 seasons with Sunderland, Plymouth, and then Oxford last year. They went and spent nearly £1 million on Shabolik Sean. I think that's how you pronounce it. Who was at Ajax as a youngster, and then went back to his native Hungary and played for Ferivar, is it? I think and that's how you pronounce it. So they've gone out and spent money this year, bringing in more players, strengthening further. But on the field, it's not working. Fans are talking about them having no intensity, having a mental problem when it comes to winning games. No drive, no spirit, and no desire, which they reckon they had previously. I think that's what happens when a manager's been at a club for an extended period of time, if they don't achieve what they want to achieve or expect to achieve. And they're going through this kind of turmoil. To be honest, I think we kind of felt Rotherham might be facing that, and that we'd get the most of them.
And we were shy, weren't we? Yeah.
And yeah, we didn't turn up that, and we were awful, and it came back to bite us in the arse. But again, this is another team where we're going away from home, and we couldn't be going at a better time because the fans are expectant. And now if we frustrate them and make it hard for them, even if they're dictating the game in regards of possession, but not necessarily chance creation, it'll get hard for them. They won't like it. So Town have just got to live with them not live with them, that's a bit unfair, but frustrate them, make it hard for them, turn the atmosphere around back on the home fans, because if it is 0-0 going into 30, 35, 40 minutes, you'll start hearing that discontent. That's what's always there with these kind of games. It's a game that's going to be tough for Town, though. Bolton are a good outfit. For me, I'm like you, Matt. I'm happy with a 1-1 draw here. I think 0-0, I think they pass out from the back too much. I think there'll be something to capitalise on there. I don't think we're good enough to go to a team that scored 86 goals in the league last year.
We're not ruthless enough, are we? We're not ruthless.
No, we're not. And they scored 81 goals in this league the year before. They do know how to score goals, and I think they will score. And I think we'll have to score to get something out of it. But for me, this has got a 1-1 draw all over it. And where we've been in the last, 3 games, we won our first 3 games, didn't we? And then we've lost the last 3 games. We need to get something out of this. I think it's really important for the club to just to get some sort of positivity after this extended break with the international game. So I'll go with a 1-1 draw, and I'll always back Corona to score, Matt. You know I will.
You're not going to have Freddie Ladapos coming off the bench to score and me looking an absolute melt in the review show. No.
Oh, Matt, I'd love it. I'd absolutely love it. And
I'd love it, mate, if he does. There's nothing I like more than seeing Town do well. So, I'm all for it. Freddie, we love you. So I think that's it, mate. That's all we've got time for this week. Thank you very much to Ben from the Fan Zone. And this will become a weekly thing where we'll try and make this a worthwhile listen for you driving into the stadium, or not driving into the stadium, but driving to the game that you're going to watch. So thanks, everybody, and we'll be back next week.
There's a team that is dear to its followers. The colours are bright blue and white. They're a team of renown, they're the pride of the town, and the game of football is their delight. And all the while upon the field of play, thousands loudly cheer them on the way. Often you can hear them say, who can beat the Town today? And then the bells will ring so merrily, and every goal shall be a memory. So Town, play up and bring that cup back to Huddersfield. So Town, play up and bring the cup back to Huddersfield.